Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us for the Expert Negotiation Tactics Training session for the Short Sale Specialist Network training program here. This is Mike Lincolnauger, and with me is Ethan Gregory. Say hey, Ethan.
Hi, guys. This is Ethan Gregory with First Coast Realty. I'm the lead processor here, and I've negotiated tons of short sales with many, many different lenders.
Tons of short sales. So, and me too. You know, I've negotiated and closed well over 100 myself, and Ethan's right up there too. So what we're going to mainly talk about is some different tactics that we can use and how, you guys know how the process goes up to this point. Now we're going to talk about some obstacles and barriers and how to overcome them. Now, first I want to talk about mitigating deals in-house and the importance of doing it in-house as opposed to using a third-party mitigation company or any outside institution other than yourself. There's a few different reasons. One, there can be a lack of communication and general control of the process and of the transaction. The agent, the listing agent, and the listing brokerage company needs to have control of the transaction themselves. That's a very big reason there.
Yeah, Mike being the listing agent and me being the head processor here, we communicate constantly regarding deals, bounce ideas off each other, trying to get these things approved. What can we do with the house? What can we do with the seller? So it's imperative that either you're doing it all on your own or you're hiring someone in-house that you're working with every day regarding getting these things approved.
Absolutely, just so there's no breakdown in communication. And remember, too, guys, we're going to talk more about the final session of the training is regarding setting up a team and how to delegate responsibilities. So again, lack of communication is one reason not to use outside mitigation company. Also, there's no regulation of short sale mitigation companies. Licensed brokerage companies, we're state-regulated institutions. We actually have something to lose if we don't do our job properly. And another reason, too, is lenders, for the most part, don't pay mitigation fees. A lot of times they get bounced off to the buyers, which is a whole other ethics question there. And also, you pay a chunk of your commission, which you shouldn't have to give up your commission. You work your butt off to do these short sales. You deserve to get your full commission. And also, too, not to mention a lot of the mitigation companies are under the guise of investment companies that are really just want their own control over your short sale transactions.
Yeah, and we're going to go over this later regarding investors, and sometimes they'll have a mitigation company and try and get you in to use them. So we're going to go over that later regarding some pitfalls with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, the first step, once you get a good package together, first thing to do is to send the authorization into the lender. That's a good first step in the process. And
well, the first thing you want to do when you list the property is always get that authorization signed and also get that listing agreement signed. And once you get back to the office, go ahead and send that information to the lenders so you have the ability to talk to them should any issues come up. Sometimes the lender will go out there and they'll, quote-unquote, secure the property, which means they'll rekey it, lock you out. So make sure you have the ability to go in there and talk to these lenders on the seller's behalf. And that way, if you find out any information from them regarding this loan, or if you need to get it rekeyed, whatever needs to happen, you are going to be ready to do that just on a phone call without having to wait to send in an authorization again. So make sure you get that first off.
Absolutely, and there's some lenders out there actually too. Once you send in the authorization, you talk to them, they'll want to go ahead and get all the documents and pre-approve the short sale. There's a few lenders doing that nowadays. So as soon as you get the listing agreement, get the authorization, immediately at least send those couple of items to the lender. And that way, if anything, that'll at least serve as some form of notification to them that you're trying to do a short sale on the property. Now, once you get an offer and submit a short sale package to the lender, you got all the docs, you got the HUD, you guys know how to do that. You're a pro at making HUDs now. You want to create a follow-up schedule, and generally, how often you're going to follow up. Now, once they acknowledge receiving the package, a good rule of thumb is you could plan on following up a couple times a week through the process. Once they acknowledge receiving a complete package, which, by the way, you may be faxing it multiple times to do that. Typically, it will take a couple of days for them to acknowledge receiving all the documents.
Yeah, and make sure you set yourself up with reminders or a call sheet with notes on when to call back so you keep yourself on a schedule. However you do it is fine. Some people have computer programs that'll automatically remind them. Some people just prefer to do it on a written call sheet. Really up to you how you want to do it. Yeah, definitely set yourself up on a structured system there so you're using this with every time. So every day when you go in and look at your files, you don't have to think about which one to go to. You just know which one to go to.
Absolutely. They're on your schedule. And there are some programs out there, like Short Sale Commander is one of the most commonly used ones that we run into. Now, so once you send the package in, the main initial goal is to get the BPO ordered and get the file assigned to a negotiator. That's where it starts. So the first few things you want to ask the lenders once you send a package in, first and foremost, do they have a complete package and do they have all the documents they need for the transaction? Probably 4 out of 5 times they somehow missed something in the 3 times he faxed the package over.
Yeah, what I'll do a lot of times is with that person I'm on the phone with, who's generally a short sale support staff person, I will sit there with them on the phone and say, hey, I want you to go through the file, because they'll have taken the fax that you sent them and have imaged it and put it in their system, and they'll be able to look at it all right there. Make sure you at least ask them for the main things, like the contract and the HUD and the listing agreement. Sometimes with a fax, different page will be missing here and there. That's not uncommon, or sometimes they just lose your documents. That's part of it. So make sure also that when you do this, you're looking at our resources there on our website regarding different fax numbers to send it to. Certain ones like Bank of America, obviously, are on an online system, a little more confirmation that they have received that. So make sure you look at that, and if you're ever unsure, just go ahead and call and ask what number to send it to. And sometimes by doing that, you can get a real good relationship with someone, and you can just send it directly to them. And sometimes I've been on the phone with some people I talk with, and then I said, I've faxed this thing twice. You guys haven't received it. And she said, you know what? If you can email me the packet, I'll do it. So sometimes being nice to these people and asking nicely can get you a long way to getting your packet submitted and done a lot quicker.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you 100% too. And when you send the package too, go down your checklist to make sure that they have all the documents. Your form there that has the actual checklist of things that you sent, just to confirm that they have received everything. Because remember, we want to do whatever we can to keep the process from being delayed, if possible, in any way at all. Now, a lot of times too, if you do ask the lenders, when will they order BPO? When will the file be assigned to a negotiator processor? You can get an idea sometimes of their processes, which unfortunately change like clockwork from lender to lender many times. But a lot of times the timelines are not correct. Many times a lender will say an outrageous time frame just to keep you from calling regularly. That's a fact. Many of the lenders just give, long time frames and long timelines just to discourage you from calling every couple of days. Ignore those and stick with your follow-up schedule.
And make sure you're telling these people that you want to be the point of contact, whether that's you or your processor. Tell them that. Make sure to take down your phone number, your fax number, your email, all that stuff, so they know you are the point of contact for that BPO or appraiser or for that negotiator. That's a very, very important thing. And also include that information on your cover sheet that you're sending in with your package as well, just so there's no doubt that you are the person to contact.
Absolutely. So that way, again, when they do call to order this BPO, they contact you and you directly, so you can, remember, give your BPO to the agent who does it for the lender, or at least have some kind of say in that situation. You want to be the point of contact. That's very, very important there. Now also, too, you want to document any form of communication that you have with the lender. We have a call log sheets that you guys can use there, and also make sure you save any fax confirmations that you get as well. Now, the process obviously can be very time-consuming. Short sales require a lot of patience and perseverance and a little bit of arrogance, too, in there, I think, to get them all done. But, if you can call and insist that your file be processed. If it's not getting anywhere, there are some ways that we'll talk about in just a second here as to, get it escalated. But, once your file is finally assigned to a negotiator, I says, remember, that negotiator has the ability to make or break your short sale file. they can put you at the top of the stack or at the bottom of the stack there. So you want to make sure your short sale package is not only very organized and together, but you are very organized and together, and you treat these negotiators very well. Many of them are overworked and underpaid as well, and unfortunately they're just victims many times to very poor practices that their own companies have. So it's nothing, personal if you feel that your file isn't being treated well. So you want to really take care of these negotiators and make sure that you know that you appreciate them.
Yeah, and always act in a professional manner when you're emailing them. Don't just send random emails that don't make sense. Make sure what you send to them makes sense. Talk some of the bank language. These are assets to them, and they're borrowers. They're not sellers. They're not homes. These are assets that have a borrower on them, and that's the way they're looking at them. And so you need to be professional and be courteous with them. Sometimes your negotiator will get ugly with you, just depending on who it is and what it is, and sometimes you got to fight back a little bit. But also understand you're depending on these people, and if you come the wrong way, they just might not look at your file for a while. So just remember that when you're getting on them a little bit.
Absolutely. So be careful what you say, and always be to the point and direct with any written inquiries. If you want to ask them something, don't write a 2-paragraph explanation of what you're looking for. Now, here's another key negotiation point here is finding email addresses. Now, it's ideal to get an email address of your negotiator as soon as possible. A lot of times, if you can find out while the file is being processed, before many lenders will give you the actual contact information, or you were actually contacted by the negotiator, you're already assigned to this person in advance. So if you call in and speak to just a general processor, you can say, well, what's the negotiator's name? Who's the negotiator? And if you can get their name many times, with most lenders, it can be a skill to figure out their email address based on the person's name.
Yeah, I've done that many times. Just know their name. They wouldn't give me their email, and so just go on a website and you look on the company's website and look up, what an email address is for just anybody there, and it's probably in the same format. So you can sometimes figure it out. I've gotten things pushed through pretty quickly that way. They're not going to ask a question of where you got my email because they're just going to assume the short sale support staff person gave it to them. So just try different ones. Sometimes that works to get some attention. Sometimes you just got to refuse to be denied with these short sales. You just got to push hard and do whatever you can to get some attention paid to them.
Absolutely. But typically, a good rule of thumb is it's first name dot last name. So I know Bank of America and Wells Fargo use that, and a lot of the other ones typically do as well. GMAC, I believe, as well. So, make sure, like Ethan said, you check the company's website and see the format that other people's names are used on there. And that's a great way to get your file up in advance. And you can say, hey, how's it going, Joe? I just want to see where you're at with my file. And that's before, that could actually move up your process a little bit there. So that's another way just to get some extra attention on your file. Now, here's another good issue here we're going to solve. What if your file isn't going anywhere? What if it isn't getting processed? Answers are not happening. They're just not ordering a BPO. They're not doing their job, which happens very frequently. It is okay to insist that files be escalated, or to demand, and say, hey, the buyers are close to backing out. We need an answer now, and insist that they push things. But really, it's a good idea, too, if you can do a little bit of research and contact people in upper management or short sale department heads, loss mitigation heads via email. Now, the shortsaleguide.com is a great resource to go on there and ask questions like that, who can I contact? Because there's people in our network that will gladly share with you the heads of the loss mitigation departments. Now, if you do get these contacts, obviously they are not to be abused. Don't start emailing them with every short sale file. Don't start emailing them every day. But, if you want to get your file escalated and get some attention on it, it's okay to go to upper management. It's okay to go to, VPs and department heads to say, hey, what in the world is going on here? And I'll tell you what, we've had, it's a good way to get attention on your files very quickly.
I've had one instance where we emailed a president at a large company, and needless to say, when that got down to the lower levels, that this guy was obviously very upset, we got an answer within a week.
Absolutely.
They had a BPO out there that day. They had it reviewed. I sent an extra document or two in, and this thing, we had an answer within a week. So sometimes that does work if you can find a way to make that happen. And again, don't abuse that. Use this for problem files. I mean, they have a system and processes that it goes through. But if you have a problem file, don't be afraid to make it a point to get something done.
Absolutely, very good point. Now, next I want to talk a little bit about a couple of ways to buy yourself some more time in the short sale process, and ways to just postpone foreclosure sales. Now, first and foremost, most lenders will stop the foreclosure proceedings once they receive an offer on the property. Any offer on the property. That's very, very important to stress. So if there is anybody that you know or that the homeowner knows that can put any kind of offer on the property, with a proof of funds or whatever, go ahead and submit it, and submit the short sale package. If anything, you're going to get that foreclosure process stopped, buy yourself some more time, and many times it can be 3 to 6 months you can buy yourself like that.
And what you can do is when you send that offer in with your HUD and everything, make sure you send it in to the proper departments and contact them and let them know and tell them you need a foreclosure stopped. Sometimes they'll say, oh, no, we can't do it, or we're not the right department. So maybe you ask for the foreclosure or the recovery department or their collections department. Ask for those names and those numbers. Sometimes that'll help, and you can get someone who can really make something happen.
Absolutely. So there's two ways there. You can get an offer submitted on the property. You can just simply ask the lenders to stop the process and let them know that you're trying to do a short sale. Or another way is, if you're in a judicial foreclosure state, is to go to the hearings and request more time from the judge. We know here in Florida, for example, it's very common. I mean, judges will give as much time as needed typically if you show up there. We tell our sellers here in Florida, the only thing we ask is to let us know if you have a hearing date or a sale date, and we'll do what we can to stop it.
In those states, these judges, they're very overwhelmed with tons of foreclosures, particularly right now. And if you can show that the seller is doing all they can to help the lender out by short selling the property, and they have hired a competent individual to go down there and talk on their behalf to the judge, they're willing to give you some time because they realize you're trying to do all you can. So that's a great way to get some more time.
Absolutely. And worst case scenario too now is to have a temporary loan modification done. Now, sometimes we kind of suggest against this just because typically the short sale will get dropped sometimes if there is already an offer on it. This is something that should be done only if there's no offer on the property yet, and as kind of a last resort, just because again, it's typically temporary though. It's one of the temporary forbearance repayment plans, but that right there can buy a few months as well. Next, I'm going to cover a little bit about multiple offers and what's a good way to handle property. You list it on the market, it's priced well, it's priced aggressively, and you get there's 2-3 offers that come in on it within a couple days of each other. Now, these lenders are overwhelmed as it is. They are receiving these short sale packages that are 40 to 60 pages of documents typically or more. The last thing that they want to see is 3 or 4 different offers, 10, 20-page offers for a property. That is unnecessary completely. They do not need to see all of that stuff. What we typically encourage sellers to do is to, in the case of multiple offers, is to entertain highest and best offers from all the parties that made an offer. Say, give your highest and best offer on the property. And review the offers with them. Obviously, price is not everything. You want to look for buyers that are willing to wait for the process. You want to look for potentially cash buyers, or financing should have something to do with it because it's an as-is sale.
And make sure your buyer is okay with waiting that 2 months and that, or however long it takes you to get an answer, and that when that time comes, will they be willing to bring their offer up at that point too? Because sometimes the lender's going to come back and want more money and bigger offer off of it.
Absolutely. So once you get the one offer, encourage the seller to accept one offer, the highest and best offer, and just submit that offer only to the lender. As you would with the regular short sale package and all that. Submitting multiple offers can confuse the negotiators at the bank, and also too, it could give them the what we refer to as the hot property effect. In other words, they say, oh, wow, there's 3 offers coming in on this property. It must be a really appealing property. You know what, let's reject all these offers and ask for more money. And then they never approve anything. You're waiting for the process even longer. it drags it out. And many times it is not necessary. So once there's one offer accepted, just present the one offer, and depending on your local laws, go ahead and try to get it put into escrow, get a good escrow or binder deposit on that, and put it under that appropriate status for the time being in the multiple listing service. There's no need to get many offers waiting and that sort of thing, because in the event that even that buyer does back out of the deal, they can actually work to get it pre-approved. And that's what I want to cover next, getting deals pre-approved. Now, that's a tough word to use when it comes to short sales, but it's overused a lot, unfortunately. But in many cases and in many areas, we figure 65 to 75% of the time, the first buyer's who makes an offer on the property, they will back out of the short sale before it is approved. Unfortunately, this is due to timelines, which hopefully HAFA here program will help repair some of that. But the first buyer, in many cases, is just a guinea pig. They're just going to help determine exactly what the lender will accept, what terms and conditions they will approve, and net payoff they will accept on the transaction. And the neat thing about that is if once that's approved, whether or not the buyer is still there, it's typically going to be a very low price and a low payoff amount that if it's remarketed as a lender-approved short sale, a buyer will come out very fast for it. And this next buyer in line, no longer do they have to wait 2 months. They can wait 2 days, 2 weeks sometimes for approval.
And sometimes that can depend on your different lenders that you're working with. You may have to resubmit that new offer, or sometimes it'll just be a general approval letter that says all we want is this certain amount. Don't care about the buyer, who it is, just get us this amount.
Absolutely.
It can really just depend on which lender you're working with, and you have to work through and work with these different lenders to find out, what their different policies are.
Absolutely. Some will give a couple of months on the approval letters with no buyer's name on it. That's just an ideal situation. There's also HUD-approved short sales where you get 90 days for them as well, which we talked about earlier as well. So, again, ideally, if a buyer does back out also of the short sale transaction, obviously we don't ask people to be dishonest if a lender asks. But this is kind of a don't ask, don't tell situation. If they don't ask you, is the buyer still around, don't tell them. Let them continue to process the transaction. Let them continue to approve it. In the meantime, you're marketing it, and as soon as they do approve it, you knock it down. You encourage the sellers to agree to knock it down to the same offer that was previously approved, with the very same terms, that offer that would net the seller or the lenders the same amount, and market it as being lender approved. And again, you have to be very cautious doing that, but obviously the lender wants to know much of the time.
And when you do that, you market at that price. Make sure that you built in enough money to pay for any more outstanding HOA dues that may have accumulated, or taxes, or any other problems. So sometimes a little fudge room in there to cover that those extra expenses is sometimes necessary. Mm-hmm. So you may want to think about that one too.
Absolutely. That's a good point, Ethan. Usually we encourage the sellers to knock it up a little higher than the previous offer that was approved, because, again, we want to leave a cushion for any unexpected things. And also, if anything, we want to give a lender more than they previously approved. It's tough to ask for less.
Yeah, it's harder to ask for less, and if you give them a little more money, they're probably going to be happy to send you a new approval letter.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, when you have two different lenders on the transaction. You have a first lender and a second lender. The first position lender, for example, only wants to give $3,000 to the second lender. We'll give a scenario here. There's a second position loan on the property for $100,000. The first position only wants to pay $3,000 to the second position. A second position says, we want 10% to do this. We want 10 cents on the dollar to do this. There's a few different ways that we do here, and we can negotiate these. And here's a direct order that we usually will do them in. First, we ask for the buyer to make a contribution, and ask for the buyer to cover that difference there in many cases. And obviously, we try all we can to negotiate between the two and to get the first to come up some as well. First won't come up, second won't come down. First step is we talk to the buyer about making a contribution. The good thing about this is many times the buyer has already waited 6, 8 weeks or more. They're ready to close. They know they're getting a very good deal anyway, and this might just be their negotiating money anyway. So many times the buyer is willing to pay a few thousand extra to cover a lot of that difference. Next, we go to the seller and discuss with the seller if they have any funds they can contribute to satisfy the second lien against the property to bring it up to a level where they'll accept. If neither of the parties are willing or have the funds or able to do it, then we go back to the lenders again and try to get them to make a concession. Now, typically, a lot of times, if there's a letter from the seller saying that they don't have any funds, they'll make a concession. Last case scenarios, unfortunately, if there's two lenders, sometimes that leaves the brokerage commission up to being negotiated. And, we've had to do that in instances to where it's what it takes to make a transaction happen. Our job here, guys, is we win some, we lose some with these short sales. Sometimes we get, great commissions. We've done some, that we've received excellent commissions on. Others we have to take a little hit. It averages out, and we do pretty good when the day's over with. So if we have to take a 1 or 2% cut on the commission to make a transaction happen sometimes, that's what we do. That's what we do as agents, and we move on to the next one. We hope for a referral from this, this person who we saved from foreclosure, and we can make money off of their referral. So that's how we do that. If there's multiple lenders on the properties, typically there's a way to do it. It requires, when there's actually first and a second and there's negotiations, that's when we're no longer calling every other day, we're calling somebody every day. That's when we're going back and forth very, very quickly because we're close. Whether you realize it or not, if there's a disagreement between the first and the second, you're very close to approval. Everybody's already done their due diligence. They've already looked at the package. They're ready to wheel and deal. It's just up to us to be there to negotiate and make things happen one way or the other. Now, if a lender does ever want to just negotiate a commission with you guys, we do work very hard for these. And just because they request and say, hey, we will only pay 5% does not mean you have to settle for that. We strongly encourage people, and we do this ourselves, is on any future HUDs, continue to request 6%. Continue to show 6% on those HUDs. And many times the lender will overlook that, especially if the price of the property, the sales price of it, is close to the BPO. If it's a pretty high offer, you can usually get your 6% commission. Another reason, too, is some approval letters that they send out, even though they may have said they will only pay a 5% commission, some of the approval letters don't even state the total commission, but instead will just state a net amount that the lender is to receive, or a total amount for the closing costs, including the brokerage fees. Now, this is the great thing, because if you overestimated the homeowners association dues, for example, and the lender just gives one whole amount for closing costs in total, you can easily get your full commission that way. And it's perfectly legitimate. It's on the letter that they would pay this much for closing costs. So that's just another way there. But just because they ask for it and insist for it doesn't mean you have to settle for it, period. Does not mean you settle for less than you deserve. You worked your bottom off for this deal. You put up with them for some time. You deserve 6%. Next, I want to cover a little bit about the deficiency. Now, this isn't applicable in many states. Many states, when the lender's options are either they foreclose on it or they accept the short sale. There's no deficiency amount there. And in many states, though, in judicial foreclosure states, typically, the borrower can be held liable and responsible for the deficiency after foreclosure, and the lenders will seek a deficiency judgment against the homeowner. That's a permanent thing on their credit that they could be liable for. So what some lenders will say is they'll do what some refer to as a soft short sale. A soft short sale is when they say, okay, we'll take this amount, these proceeds from the sale, we'll apply it towards your principal balance, and we'll release our security against the debt. In other words, we're going to apply what we're getting here towards what you owe us, but you still owe us. Many times, too, sometimes that they'll ask the full amount be repaid. Sometimes lenders can ask a portion of it be repaid. Now, there's several ways to deal with this once this happens. Now, first and foremost, you got to point out, we've actually had some in many cases to where the borrower will insist that the lender ask the deficiency be repaid. Now, the reason we've had that happen a couple times is for bankruptcy purposes. And many times the amount that's actually owed in the deficiency can be the difference between moving from a Chapter 7 to Chapter 13 or vice versa. So, some sellers, it's actually a good thing. But the one thing that we point out the most, first and foremost, is anytime anything is asked to be repaid, it is then unsecured debt. The lender has released their security against the debt. That means that if the borrower does not repay that deficiency after closing, the lender really has, no tangible property that's tied to that loan that they could come after and get. They've released that when they released the lien against the property. So that deficiency essentially becomes no different than a credit card debt. It's no different than a credit card debt that's not being collected on.
And what these lenders ask for is called a soft note, a promissory note. They can call it a couple different things. But they'll ask for that, and it'll be some terms. Either it'll be the full balance or partial amount of the balance, and they'll expect, most of them will do is 0% interest. They just want it paid back over time. Or sometimes they even ask for a cash contribution from the seller. Depending on the seller's financial situation and what they reviewed, they will actually ask for, a couple $1,000s from the seller for them to release the lien. And that may be okay with the seller depending on their financial situation. And when you do this, and let's say the seller does not have, they're truly in a financial hardship, and you've explained this to the lender, and the seller is really in a tough situation. They don't have money to pay back this thing over the next 5-10 years, and they don't have any cash to bring at closing, but for whatever reason, that lender is still requiring they take it. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll have the seller write a letter stating that we are in a financial hardship, our hardship situation has not changed from the time we submitted the packet, and I do not have the ability to bring any cash to closing, and I do not have the ability to repay a loan over whatever the terms are that they give you, and say they don't have any funds, please accept the short sale, I do not have the ability to do this. That letter, signed and dated by the seller, will sometimes get them to just let it go. And I've had that happen, where the lender is requesting it, demanding it, but then I have a written letter from the seller stating they don't have the ability, and they just forgot about it and went on and approved the short sale. So that does help sometimes, no matter what the lender says. Some lenders will still require it, and you just got to roll with it when you can and try and make it happen. And that comes down to your negotiation and what you can talk about with the seller and their situation as well.
Mm-hmm. And I've also done a couple to where, you can ask the buyer to make a cash contribution. Many times, these lenders know that, look, if they release their security against the debt and it becomes unsecured debt, it's likely to just go to collections. If you remind these lenders that hey, look, this homeowner's in financial hardship. I mean, they're unemployed, or something like that. They don't have the ability to repay this. A lender, a lot of times, will accept like 10% right then and there to just totally forget about the deficiency. And typically, too, if the deficiency is not repaid and it does, go to collections, like a credit card debt, typically lenders will settle, or collection agencies will settle literally for 10 to 20 cents on the dollar of that deficiency amount. It's very important.
We've had multiple instances where we've had the seller take back a deficiency balance in the form of a promissory note, and then a month later go back to the lender and say, whoever that is, and say, hey, I don't have the ability to repay this over time, can we just settle this, after closing? That happens all the time. Absolutely.
The key is to, get the foreclosure stopped at all costs.
Exactly.
But many times, though, too, if you get a higher offer is also another way, too. You talk to the lender and say, well, what if we were to bring you a higher offer? Is there a chance the deficiency could be waived in the event of a higher offer on there as well? So, we talked about getting deficiencies forgiven, negotiating, commissions. We've talked about a lot here, and remember some of the other things that do delay the process in general. Mortgage insurance approval will cost a little time, delay there. Any government loan is typically delayed a little. If there's 2 loans on the property, obviously that's a little more negotiations. And also, a good percentage of the time, the the person you're talking to is actually the servicer of the loan, it will require investor approval, and the investor will have to actually have final approval of the short sale. All of those things typically will add a little delay. So, we learn as we go to where if you have a property with 2 loans, the first one has mortgage insurance and another investor on it, just to get all those parties to agree is quite some time extra there. One last thing I want to talk about in this session here is investors and short sales. Now, there's a couple different kinds of investors that work with short sales. There's some great investors out there who will get short sales who are a very, very good asset to the real estate market. They will come in, purchase a short sale property, renovate it, fix it up, invest some capital, and a real investor makes capital investments, by the way. That's what a real investor does. They invest and they take risks. And they will then resell the property for profit. And those type of investors, if you have properties that are in need of some repairs and that sort of thing, investor might be ideal for a property like that, especially one that, would require cash financing or some kind of hard money special financing. Now, there's another type of investor that wants to try to convince you that you have no business doing short sales as an agent, that your job is to list properties and sell properties. You shouldn't be negotiating with banks. Let me negotiate your short sales for you. I have great people to negotiate them for you, and let us have our way essentially with your customers. Most of those investors are really out to, unfortunately, just flip your property to a real buyer. And, same-day closings. There's a lot of that going on right now, so beware. If you list short sale properties, you will be targeted, and you are going to be targeted by investors. I want to share this with you. You are perfectly capable of mitigating and negotiating your own short sale transactions yourself. You're perfectly qualified. You know what you're doing. It's not a very complicated process, guys. You just have to have a little practice at it.
And with these investors that want to mitigate the short sale for you and try and flip it the same day, there are some ethical questions raised there regarding your code of ethics with your board of realtors, as well as sometimes potentially legal issues that will come up, and sometimes issues with the short sale lender and whether or not they're doing things legally per the rules that they have set forth in the approval letters. So beware of that. It can be a real pitfall for you and your career and your business. So be very, very careful of those people.
Yes, if you want to make it in the long run in the short sale business, stay away from that sort of thing. Most of the lenders will require arm's length affidavits be signed in various forms to ensure that there are not these type of transactions where there's side deals going on and that sort of thing as well. Again, you're perfectly capable of doing these yourself. However, it's always wise to delegate the responsibility to someone else in your office, such as an assistant or a designated processor. After all, you are a real estate agent. So our next session, and our final session, we're going to talk in general about setting up a team, so where you can delegate responsibilities and do what you do best. Again, I want to thank you all for participating in the expert negotiation session.
Thank you, guys.